Hello my friends, welcome back to Garhdo Goes Geek. On today's episode, I'm going to be taking a look at a horror film. I'd originally planned this to come out during Halloween, but obviously with the strikes, I didn't feel right releasing content at that point, and so I'm doing it now. And I'm taking a look at a film that hit its 35th anniversary last year, if I've done my maths right, which is Killer Klowns from Outer Space. A movie that is very, very funny. I saw for the first time, genuinely quite liked, and is now getting a game and a resurgence in fandom. So let's have a look at it, shall we? Right, so first to review it, I think I should probably discuss what Killer Klowns from Outer Space actually is. It's essentially a science fiction horror comedy written, directed, and produced by the Chiodo brothers. Now, if you haven't heard of the Chiodo brothers, I can guarantee you know their work. They are a trio of brothers who have all had a history in special effects. They specialize in clay modeling, creature creation, stop motion, and animatronics. Now, while they didn't necessarily do much of the special effects work for Killer Klowns itself, because obviously they were working on other duties such as producing and directing, they have worked on many other projects. For example, projects they are quite well known for are Critters, Ernest Scared Stupid. They did work on Team America World Police. They did the claymation sequence for the Large Marge scene in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. They did the stop motion elements for the North Pole scenes in Elf. They created the dioramas for Dinner for Schmucks. They did a puppet segment for an episode of The Simpsons, the Fight Before Christmas episode. They even did the stop motion in the recent Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. So they've done a lot of work that's all over the industry and has been for decades now. They're quite well known in special effects circles. Now, they've also done claymation segments for like 5 other episodes of Simpsons, thinking about it. They've done parody of Wallace and Gromit for an episode of called Angry Dad the Movie. All sorts of other parodies and bits and pieces. Like I said, in special effects circles, they're quite well known. They're some of these go-to guys for these particular types of effects. Now, Killer Klowns from Outer Space seems to have basically been born from the idea that they wanted to just create their own project rather than just making the special effects for someone else's. They wanted to really get into it and do it all themselves. And I have to say, it worked. It really did. Essentially, plot-wise, the film basically feels almost like a B movie. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but I mean the style of like the sort of the 1950s horror sci-fi B movies, in that, it's a ridiculous premise, but it's also a premise that's being done so earnestly and so wholeheartedly that it doesn't feel like a B movie. Like, there's real work that's gone into this. Now, the plot is basically a clan of extraterrestrial clowns arrive on Earth, invade a small town, and then proceed to capture, kill, or harvest pretty much every single one of the human inhabitants there to use as sustenance. The film uses rubber suits, it uses puppetry, it uses all sorts of weird and wonderful visual effects that are all practical as well, all practical effects as far as I can tell, and has generally gone on to get really positive reviews and has become a cult classic. You know, it's also one of the few films I can think of from like this time period where the people involved own everything. You know, the soundtrack was done by John Massari, so I think that's something that they got signed over to them. But, you know, it was directed by Stephen Chiodo, written by Charles and Stephen Chiodo, produced by the three of them together, so Charles, Edward, and Stephen. The production company was their own. So, yeah, they own the rights to everything, which means that anytime they want to do anything with it, which they have over the years, it's up to them. It makes licensing it really easy, unlike something, for example, like Friday the 13th, where the rights are an absolute mess, or again something like Evil Dead. You know, Evil Dead, which I've spoken about before, the rights for those three movies are all over the place, to the point that when they did the Ash versus Evil Dead series, they didn't have the rights to anything from Army of Darkness, because that movie was produced by a different production company. So, yeah, this is a single film franchise, but there is a franchise there because it has, marketing. And like I said, it's now got an upcoming video game. The film itself is fun. I had a hell of a good time with this. It's just really dumb, schlocky fun. And like I said, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, sometimes you do just want a film that is just ridiculous, but that's literally what this is. They've basically taken a core concept of aliens but clowns, like killer clowns, and gone wild with it and just done every possible thing you could think of with that core premise. The human characters themselves, fairly forgettable. Mostly there as just cannon fodder almost. Except for the police officer. There's an antagonistic police officer called Kurt Mooney, who's played by John Vernon from Animal House. He's quite memorable, but only in so much as he comes across as a complete dick and you're really waiting for him to get killed. He's that character in the horror movie, because every horror movie in the 80s had one of those characters. The clowns, though, they make the whole thing. I tried counting while watching the film how many distinct clowns there are, and it's a lot. I think I counted about 20 distinct clowns. However, apparently there were only like 4 molds made for the main clowns. One was peanut shaped, one was triangular, one was circular, and the final one was this inverted triangle. So from those 4 molds, they produced like 2 clown characters for each. But, even then, like watching it, there's more than just those 8 clowns. There's different suits and different masks and things like that. And yeah, I think it looks really good. They each seem to have their own costume, their own hair, their own makeup. And then obviously all of the main clowns, of which there is possibly about 8 or so, have, they have distinct like makeup and animatronics, but they've also got, the animatronics give them facial features, like the ears move, the lips move, the eyes move, and it's all puppetry. Like there's nothing real there. Well, nothing real as in like there's no makeup on a face. It's a puppet head that looks vaguely human, and the designs of the clowns, you can kind of follow these clown designs throughout the movie. A couple of them reappear throughout the thing and have different kills. And then, of course, there's all the accoutrements that go with the aesthetics. So, obviously, like I said, the core concept, killer clowns. You have weapons like a popcorn gun, which was apparently the most expensive prop made for the movie. It included a compressor that would actually allow it to propel popcorn. So it made it the most expensive single prop because it cost $7,000 to make and 6 weeks to build it. There's like balloon dogs, which actually had their legs coated in latex so that they didn't pop on the pine needles. There's shadow puppetry, which they do with like traditional animation. There's the candy cocoons, like candy floss cocoons for the people, which is such a weird concept, but works really well. In fact, most of the kills in this movie, like the kill count actually did this on a movie and worked out this, if you take the amount of dead bodies you see, like not counting the room full of cocoons on the alien ship, but counting the cocoons that you see in the parade sequence, there's something like a kill every 2 minutes in this movie, in terms of the screen time. It's probably not far off from that. There's, even if you don't count any of the cocoons, there are a lot of kills in this. And that adds to the kind of the B movie aesthetic and the kind of the schlocky horror movie. But this doesn't feel like a slasher. This, the from outer space was deliberately added so that people wouldn't think it was a slasher movie. And yeah, I think it's a lot of fun. But yeah, what else do we have? There's the candy cocoons. There's one clown that's on like an invisible bike, which is so bizarre just to even say, but watching it is hilarious. The popcorn gun actually fires the popcorn, then starts to move and then like turns into these like clown tentacle things. That's ridiculous. There's the fact that their ship looks like a circus tent once it's landed, but it's made of metal. Like a character kicks it or punches it and like hurts himself. There's the actual puppets as well, not just the balloon dog. There's actual puppets. Like one of them sets up like a puppet theater and does like a Punch and Judy type thing. And they've actually incorporated that into the game as well. Like one of the weapons in the game always has a puppet holding it. So the clown has a puppet on his hand and the puppet is holding the gun. Because I think you get the one kill from that one with the puppet, but then you see another one holding a puppet later on as well. Yeah, it's so bizarre. Or like there's the parade as well, which I mentioned, that like there's one point in the movie where the clowns are parading down the street and they've got this big vehicle that's sucking up all the candy cane candy floss bodies. There's like body bags. There's one moment where the main girl, I've forgotten her name now, Debbie, she's being chased around her house by the clowns, and like she goes to jump out the window and looks down and there's a whole load of clowns there with a trampoline, and it looks like that scene in Dumbo where the clowns are down holding the trampoline waiting for him to jump into it. So yeah, it's literally, there's even one bit where they basically come out of a clown car. The car pulls up and then like 8 clowns get out of it. Then they all pick up pies and throw the pies at a dude, and the dude just kind of melts. Every silly thing that you could think to do with the concept of using a clown as a horror movie monster / slasher killer is in this film. Even the kills themselves, some of them are funny. Like there is one where Shorty rides up in like a tiny bike. Shorty's one of the clowns, rides up in a tiny bike to a big group of bikers. And one of them asks if he can go on his bike, and the clown like shakes his head like no. So then the guy trashes his bike instead, like picks it up and smashes it. So Shorty does like a little cry, then jumps off screen, comes back down with boxing gloves, and is like leveling up like a pugilist to the big guy towering over him. And the guy says, "What are you going to do? Knock my block off?" So Shorty does. He literally just uppercuts him. The guy's head goes flying and lands in a bin. It's so silly, so ridiculous. And yeah, just using clowns in a real silly, fun way. It's... Yeah, you can tell it was made by special effects guys. Special effects guys who just wanted to show off all of the cool things they had made. In a movie, they made the film so that basically it has clowns all over the film in a way that most other horror movie monsters kind of aren't. Like, there's a lot of horror where the monster is kind of built up to, or the killer is built up to, or it's like, even if they're there, you don't see them in their element so much, until quite later on. And sometimes it's budgetary, sometimes it's being done for tension. There is tension in this, despite the fact you see the clowns, because obviously you know what the clowns are going to do. You've worked it out quite quickly, and you kind of see, the malice in it. Like, there's one clown that sort of starts acting like a puppet gorilla outside of like a pharmacy, and two girls are kind of looking at it, and you're like, that clown's going to kill them. You don't know how, but they're going to die. Same with the biker. It's... what's going to happen. Like, one of the clowns comes into the police stations dealing with Kurt Mooney, and it's like, Kurt is going to die at the hands of this clown. You just don't know how. And that sequence goes on for quite a few minutes. And there's tension to it, but it's also funny. And it's like the funny can release the tension in a certain way, but then at the same time, you've still got like a nervous laughter to it. And it means you get the clown there doing fun stuff. Like, Mooney cuffs him, and then his hands come off, and he kind of waddles away. Oh, it's... Yeah, it's very interesting. But yeah, you can tell it's just special effects guys want to show off all the cool stuff they made. And so they've put it in as much of the film as they can to show it off. And, I compare things to, some of the other horror movies I've seen where it's like, even a modern example, something like Jeepers Creepers. The Jeepers Creepers monster is a really great design. Like, I love the design of that creature. You build up that design throughout the movie, which means you don't really get a good look at that creature until right near the end, right? Which is fine, because each time they build it up, they add a new element to it. But it also means that you don't get a lot of cool stuff with the whole creature. With the clowns here, you do. You get a lot of fun, cool stuff with the clowns. And there's some bits of this movie that are really quite genuinely creepy. Like, despite the comedy that's present in so much of the movie, there are some really creepy sequences. Like, the first one that really stood out to me was one of the clowns is like beckoning a young girl out of a burger joint, and he's got this big hammer tucked behind his back, like a big cartoon mallet, and he's leaning forward and kind of beckoning with his finger. And it is creepy. Like, the music paces it creepy. The only reason she doesn't get out is because her parents kind of stop her, from leaving the restaurant. But the parent doesn't notice the clown, bizarrely. The parade as well has got this kind of discordant music on it, to make it kind of creepy, and you see just how many body bags the clowns have, and like there's one guy who's trying to hide from them, and then they manage to catch him. Um, Debbie being attacked in her house, that's another one. Or the big clown Jumbo, after it's killed Kurt Mooney, it kind of uses him as a puppet and has him talk to I think it's Paul, one of the main characters. I've forgotten which ones. No, not Paul. Dave. I think it's Dave. Yeah, I think Dave's the cop and Mike's the boyfriend. Also, that's a weird, the weird kind of relationship drama there, because it's like at the end, it's kind of, they feel almost like a poly group in terms of their body language. Like Debbie's now with the cop, but I don't know. Like, I'm fine with that, but it's not very explicit what's going on there. So there are some scary sequences and like unsettling sequences, but there's also moments where you are laughing out loud, or at least I was. Maybe I'm just macabre and evil, I don't know, but there were parts of this where I was like, that was really funny. The soundtrack as well. Soundtrack is incredible. Like really, really good. Like the title song especially is a lot of fun. But like I said, the soundtrack is discordant when it needs to be. It's fun when it needs to be. The title song is by a band called the Dickies, and it is on Spotify and YouTube and all these other places. So if you have any subscriptions or anything like that, go and listen to it. It's a lot of fun. It starts off quite moody, and then you get the classic circus music and kind of a rocky kind of 80s vibe. It's quite fun. But yeah, there are like classic circus touches thrown in on the soundtrack as well. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I don't know what else to say. I just thought it was really, really fun. And yeah, it just works. Like on paper, I don't think it should, but it does. And like, there's so many weird ideas in here, and just scenes where it's like they were showing off props or set design or things like that, and I'm like, this shouldn't work as well as it does, but it does. And they even try to, like, some of the concepts as well, like there's the idea that the town kind of doesn't realize the whole killer clown thing, because it's like, it turns out this town has a lot of clown themed things. Like, you think, oh, that's weird, but it's like, no, well, there's a fairground where the tent actually ends up at the end of the movie. There's also the burger restaurant is themed around a big top, like a circus big top, so you've got that element to it. And then there's the Terenzi brothers, Rich and Paul, who run an ice cream car. Their ice cream car has a big clown on the roof, so of course the people start reporting these clowns into the police, and Kurt Mooney, who's manning the phones, just thinks it's just the Terenzi brothers, those asshole kids that he doesn't like, just doing things to wind him up, because he's old and jaded and very much against the youth. And it's like, no, it's not that. That's not what it is. There are people actually dying, but he just doesn't react to it because he thinks it's prank calls because of just his attitude towards the kids. Oh, yeah. But yeah, it's fun. It's really fun. And like I said, this is a film that was already successful when it came out. Like, it had mostly positive reviews because it's just dark and goofy. And even when even when it tries to hint at like a big idea, like the idea that like, what if we take our idea of clowns from these aliens, which is dropped at like one point in the movie as like a thought experiment from the character of Mike, but it's kind of a blink and you miss it because they don't dwell on it at all. It's just like, what if we get our idea of clowns from them? And that's where we get the idea of Killer Klowns as well. It's like, it's just done. But yeah, some people are like, yeah, the film is absurd in its own way, but it's very committed to how absurd it is. And so you get something that's a horror movie that's not especially scary, although like I said, there are unsettling scenes. But it's very funny because of how it executes this really inventive idea. And, it's not tacky in a bad way, but it is schlocky in a really good way. Campy but also slick and very visually striking. It's definitely memorable. And yeah, so it has positive reviews, especially from people who have gone back and re-reviewed it. There's a lot of film critics who have done that. People who reviewed it at the time and have gone back and rejudged it. But it's also gone on to become this like cult success, like a real cult hit. And I've spoken before about how you get cult films like that. It's literally just it was on TV, it was on video, it was easy to get. Like, I first saw this film on like, when you used to go into the corner shop and there'd be like the budget VHS tapes that they were selling off. And this is where I first saw it. Like, I didn't watch the film then, but this is where I first was exposed to the idea of Killer Klowns. And that's where I knew what the idea was. So it's always kind of been in the back of my mind because things like that just kind of latch into my memory. And it's like I never really forgot it because like even the title, Killer Klowns from Outer Space, like that captures your imagination. And you think, what? Okay, what's that all about? And they planned to do sequels. They were going to do a requel in 2012, like a remake and a sequel, called Return of the Killer Klowns from Outer Space in 3D. The idea would now be that Mike had grown up and had become like the town drunk and just rambling about the clowns. So then the clowns come back. He's been rambling about the clowns, but it's just ignored. So then the clowns come back and he teams up with a couple of street performers to fight them. Could have been good. I think they're still planning on making something. They have stuff written. They've got ideas to do it as a series, to do it as a film. I think at the minute, the last news we had from it was that the Sci-Fi Channel is in talks to license the rights. That was back in 2018, though, and I don't think anything's moved since then, which is a shame because, I'm not sure what they could do in a sequel that's new, but with modern techniques as well, I think there's a lot you could do in terms of making it look more convincing. I don't know how much more you could stretch the concept. I think they really did try and wring it for as much as they could in that first film. But even then, like, it's gone on to, as a cult success, the box office at the time was not, it was modest. It wasn't awful. That the film was made for like 1.8 million. Total box office of like 43 million. So it was made really cheap. So despite a relatively modest box office, that's really successful because of how cheap the film was made. And the fact it was made that cheaply with how many practical effects there are is just shows that these people knew what they were doing, you know? But yeah, it's gone because the Chiodos own the entire IP. They've been able to license it long term. So we've had things like Universal Studios Halloween Horror Nights and all this merchandise through Spirit Halloween and stuff like that in America. So it has this long legacy and is now, like I said, getting this video game, the asymmetrical multiplayer video game where everything's based on something from the movie. And it just looks amazing. Like that trailer drop for the game was sudden and unexpected. No one expected it. But it's like people are really excited for that game. Like it's been pushed back, it's been delayed a bit, but it looks great. Like I'm not even one for that type of game. I do not play multiplayer. I want to play that because it looks fun, you know? And yeah, this is a movie that I think deserves that success because it's notable and it's really fun. Like I said, it's really, really fun. So I think if you haven't seen it, go and watch it. I think you'll really enjoy it. So yeah, that was probably a bit more disjointed than originally planned. But yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. I think it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this movie. There's, plot is a little thin on the ground, but just sometimes something just works with a concept if the concept is that good. And yeah, the concept here is good. And they, like I said, they ring it for all it's worth. And you just end up with a film that I thought was a lot of fun. So yeah, that's probably all I've got to say about that. Like I said, I'm excited for the video game. I play on Xbox. If anyone wants to add me, my name is Garhdo. You can. So when that game launches, if you get that game and you're interested in playing with me, you know, I'll probably be pretty rubbish, but I'll happily play with you. In the meantime, you can add me and play me on other things like Darktide, Warhammer Darktide, Warhammer Vermintide, and World War Z I'm playing at the minute, because, World War Z. I do prefer, World War Z. I prefer World War Z for it. I'll have that argument when I review the book. Yeah, I don't play online much, but you can play me on there. Or even if you just want to compare game libraries and gamer score, feel free. But yeah, I'd love to hear what other people think about Killer Klowns if they have watched it. Personally, like I said, I really enjoyed it. I just thought it was a lot of fun. I think I might have to get my older kids to sit down and watch it because I think they'll really enjoy it. But yeah, it was just silly and dumb, and I like it. And I like that, you know, it's having the anniversary and it's having this resurgence in recent years, you know. The Scare Zone started in 2018. The Spirit Halloween started selling it in 2021. And a section of its stores get dedicated to the merchandise from the movie. And they have actually had like costumes, statues, props, signage, even life-size animatronics. And then obviously the game was announced in 2022 and is due out later this year, I think. So this is something that's getting more success, and that can only be a good thing to get more out of it. And I think we should get something more from it because this is fun. I like even if they did a sequel, I'd kind of still want it to be set in the 80s. I think part of the way the film worked as well was because it played on a lot of those classic 80s tropes. Like even in the game, the classes are going to be, biker, redneck, kid, police officer, sort of student. it's based around those core character archetypes, you know, and that seems to be what, you know, and that's because that's what's in the film. So yeah, I just think it could work, but I kind of want it to have it still be set in the 80s. I don't think it would work as a modern, like their original idea of doing a modern sequel. No, I'm not sold on that. I'd rather see something classic and silly. So yeah, like something set in the 80s but done with modern techniques. That would be good. But yeah, Killer Klowns, what did you think about it? Did you enjoy it? Until next time, my friends, you'll just look after yourselves, take the very best care of yourself. I've got one more Halloween episode coming. I was originally planning to do 3. Unfortunately, I've decided to shelve the Halloween one for a later episode where I'll probably look at the entire Halloween franchise. Originally, I was just going to do the first 2 movies, but as I've said in a few recent episodes, I kind of want to talk about everything I have to say about something when I talk about it. And as I don't feel like that was the case with Halloween, like I'd have so much to say about the other stuff later on, I kind of want to do it all together. So that'll be coming at some point in the future, but I'm not entirely sure when. But I've got one more of these bloody New Year Halloween movies that I'm looking at. Another one that's having its anniversary, or has had its anniversary in 2023. So hopefully you'll join me for that one. Until next time, guys, bye for now. Thank you, my friends, for once again joining me on Garhdo Goes Geek. Your continued support for this podcast means the absolute world to me, and I am grateful for every single one of you who stays and listens to one of my episodes. It means the absolute world. Now, if you would like to engage more with me or the podcast, we have a Discord community, small but growing, and we now have commissions open on Ko-Fi. So if there's a topic you would like to see me cover, you can pay me to cover it. All funds will be used for legal purchase of the relevant items where I do not have them. Have a look on the link tree for more information. Until next time, look after yourselves.